What's going on, guys? David with Miracle Canine Training. We are out here with Ian again in the next installment of our how-to videos. So far Ian's been here for about 7 days or so now, and we've spent a good majority of that time just forming our foundational leash training, making sure he understands how to move with that leash, making sure he understands how to access reward from us with the food here. And you can see we have him in a relatively calm place. He's nice and stable. This is the same place you guys saw that initial before video where he was freaking out, going after squirrels, things like that. So once we have all of our leash training established and we know we have the dog in a place where they know how to move with the leash, they know what to do when they feel that pressure, we can start implementing the remote collar into this. So in our training in general, a lot of the philosophies and things like that that we implement is layers of communication, right? So we've established leash communication where independently he understands how to move with this leash. I can move him forward, I can move him up into a sit, I can move him down into a down position and roll over, obviously. Come on, bud. Come on. All simply using the leash. In addition to that, we have our food communication established. I know that I can clearly identify certain behaviors that I want using a good marker with food here. So in this case, I could tell him down, I could help him into that position, say good. And that good means that he's in the correct position. He understands how to get that food reward in those situations. So next what we want to do is establish our e-collar communication, which is essentially going to take the place of the leash. So anywhere we're currently using this leash to guide him into different commands or into different positions, we're going to start layering this pressure into as well. So today what we're going to be introducing it with is the heeling and with sits and sit stays. So the first step here of what we're going to be doing is we're going to be walking him a little bit. We're going to be introducing this e-collar pressure into anywhere that we're using the leash to manage his positioning. So I'm going to be walking. Essentially, anytime he gets ahead of me, out to the side, anywhere that I don't want him to be, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be applying low continuous pressure on the e-collar. So I'm going to be holding the button down. I'm going to be helping him then where I want him to be, and then I'm going to be removing the pressure, releasing the pressure on the e-collar when he's in that correct spot. So essentially, we're creating an off switch here. So in this case, it's going to be the heeling or the sits. Right? So what we're using when we're doing this is we're using negative reinforcement, which means that we're removing something from the equation to reinforce something. So technically that release of pressure should be a reinforcement to him. It should communicate clearly that that thing that you're doing right now is what we want you doing, right? So we're gonna go ahead and get started here. We're gonna see what we get, and we'll keep you posted. All right, so first step here, like I said, is gonna be introducing the e-collar into any of the leash work that I'm doing to manage the heel. Now at this point, you can see the heel is already looking pretty good, and we haven't done anything with the e-collar just yet. So I'm gonna be using this more than anything just to fine tune the positioning that I want. So again, as I'm walking, if he gets ahead of me, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press and hold the button, back him up, and release when he gets behind me, right? In that order here. So again, if he gets ahead, press and hold, back up, release. So we're teaching that this positioning right here is the off switch, and that's where we want him to be on this walk. Now, the reason why we brought him to the park here is because around the facility he had established, again, e-collar pressure, he's established such a good walking routine that, you know, we figured we would take him somewhere where there'd be a little bit more distractions so we could get some good practice in with this. This is something we usually recommend when you're first doing it. Implement it in a low distraction environment. For first e-collar session, we're not trying to overwhelm him with the pressure. I'm honestly not going to be going very high at all on this e-collar for these first couple of days of using it here. And that's just to make sure he's understanding it clearly. It's nothing that he's getting overly stressed out or anything. He's just associating it with meaning the same thing as the leash, right? So this leash pressure and this e-collar pressure both mean exactly the same thing to him. Again, distractions like that. Pulling back, pressing and holding that pressure while we're doing it. Obviously, if there's some distractions like that, you could bring your level up a little bit. Right there, I went up just slightly to match the distraction of the squirrels to make sure that he's still staying focused and motivated. No differently than in the first leash pressure video, you would have seen that for some times we could get away with using very minimal leash pressure. Other times with more distractions, you need quite a bit more to get him into those positions. So we want to be just as dynamic with the e-collar pressure and the levels that we're using on this. Come. A lot of times for the early teaching stages with the e-collar, we tend to stay very, very low on it. This particular e-collar that we use, the Mini Educator, has 100 levels, and 90% of the levels we're working the dog at in these early stages are lower than a human can even feel. So even around that squirrel right there, I didn't have to go any higher than a 15, which is right about where you would start to feel it if you put it on your body. So we want this to not be something that's super painful or really, really aversive to him or anything like that. We just want it to be something that's clear and almost like an annoyance that he's understanding how to avoid. So as we're walking, we're gonna have additional distractions. We have a dog up here, we have some people walking, we have all sorts of different things going on that we're gonna ask him to stay nice and calm and focused through here. So again, dog over there, using that e-collar pressure to put him right back into position and adjusting that level to find what's gonna be motivating. Right there, I used the e-collar and the leash. He relaxed right back into the position I wanted him to be in. If he didn't do that, I would have went up a little bit and I would have tried again. The goal is always to use as much pressure as needed, but as little as we can get away with here. Now, as you're doing this, you could start changing your pace. Again, going from a nice slow pace to a quicker one, and then back to a slow one, to make sure that he's matching, continuing to test those boundaries a little bit as we go. Same deal with passing people. We're going to be asking him to stay nice and focused and ignore those people. If he tries to go in that direction, I'll be using the e-collar and the leash to help him.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Perfect. So no problems there, staying nice and attentive. Again, slowing that pace. You could even go to almost a total crawl like that. Make sure that he's staying nice and focused. No pressure on that leash. Good boy, buddy. Good job. Come on. Sit. Good. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start to layer the e-collar into the sits. So we have him walking nicely with us. We have him understanding this pressure with getting back into the heel position. So we're gonna start layering it into that sit command. So what I wanna do here is I wanna start walking. So I'll tell him, come. I'm gonna come to a stop. And then as I come to a stop, I'm gonna tell him sit. Good. As long as he does it, I'll mark and reward. If he were to not get into that sit position, what I would do is I would press and hold the e-collar, I would help him into the sit with the leash, and then I would release that button when his butt hits the ground. So again, in this case, instead of the off switch being in the heel position, it's gonna be being all the way in the sit position. Come, so then I'll tell him come, I'll start walking again, then I'll tell him sit. Good. And then I can mark and reward again for that. Come. Sit. Good. Now you can do this with or without rewards. Come. We prefer to try to maintain as positive of an attitude as possible with the dogs. We want to keep them engaged. We want to keep them motivated. So I tend to like using them, but inevitably we run into dogs that have minimal to no food drive that you need to be able to rely on other things in order to get them to do this stuff. So just the pressure, just the e-collar, whatever it may be. Sit. Good. Again, putting him in that position, marking with good, rewarding. Come. Sit. Good. Come. Sit. Good. Come. Sit. Good. So right there, when he got up, reapplied the e-collar, got him the rest of the way back into the position. And then I can mark and reward. Good. Come. Sit. Good. Come. Sit. Good. Come. Sit. Good. So obviously all of our commands are implied stays, which means that once we put you in it, I'm not going to give a stay command. It's just expected that you maintain that position until told otherwise. So what we're going to do is we're going to start adding some duration into this to help continue to proof that sit position with the e-collar. So come, I'm going to walk him. I'm going to put him into the sit. Sit. Good. I can mark and reward for that. And then I'm actually going to walk a circle around him here. So as I'm walking, if he gets up, e-collar pressure, leash pressure, and releasing that when his butt hits the ground again. I'm not going to say anything while I do it. Once I get my full circle, come. I'll release him with that come command again. Sit. Good. Put him in the position, mark and reward, walk your circle. Again, e-collar and leash right there. Come. And then releasing with the come command. Sit. Good. Come. Sit. Good. And that was the first one that I didn't need to use any leash or e-collar. Come. Sit. Good. 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 So that is in a nutshell the first e-collar session, what it would typically look like. Again, not holding the dog to like a really, really high criteria. We're not working around crazy distractions or anything like that. We're simply starting to reinforce these known positions that we've established this last week with him with a different sensation here. So making sure he understands that this means exactly the same thing as the leash. This is something that I'm going to work essentially this exact same session over the course of the next couple of days with him. We'll make sure he has a really clear understanding of it, continuing to hold him to a slightly higher criteria, work at slightly higher levels so we can hold him a little bit more accountable each time. And then what we'll do is we would move on to the next stage of this training, and that's something that we will obviously film and show you guys as well. So again, making sure he understands the heeling position with the e-collar, the first step of what we did, understands how to get into the sit using the e-collar pressure, and then understanding the walk around sit stage. Just a really basic little 360 around him there. Once they have a good understanding of that, we'll move on to the next stage.